Hey everyone, and welcome back to Just Finish Coding. I'm Sriram, and this video is part 6 of the Pacman game dev series where we recreate the famous arcade game on Scratch. If you haven't watched parts 1 to 5, then click on the card up here. And just a reminder, if you are stuck during any part or video, then you can head over to the downloadable files link in the description box below, download just the file that you need, and then continue. Today, we will enable a basic scoring system as the Pacman eats the food and also significantly enhance the ghost movements to make it much more in line with the real game. This will involve moving randomly at the start and then chasing the Pacman later on. With that said, let's get right into the code. First, I want to correct a very big mistake that I made in part 5. I'm not sure how I didn't realize this, but it completely screws up the ghost movement through the portals. Anyhow, in the follow path to Pacman script, we just used dir for both the conditions. I explained why this is a problem in part 5 itself, so we just need to change both of these values to dir mod 360. Great, now head over to the stage and create two variables, game mode and score. In part 5, I mentioned that there will be 3 different game modes: normal, chase, and frightened. The game mode variable will just store which one it is. Set it initially to normal, then set score to 0. Let's now ensure the food clones are eaten by the Pacman. When start game is received, repeat until game over becomes yes. At this point, we would like the clones to follow a particular script, but not the sprite itself. To ensure this, go to the create clones function and create a variable called clone for this sprite only. At the beginning of the function, set it to yes, and at the end of the function, set it to no. This way, all the clones have the variable set to yes, and the sprite itself has it set to no. Okay, back to the start game event. Here, we can now check if clone is yes. If the condition is true, then check if the clones are touching the Pacman. If yes, then increase the score by 1. We could just delete clone, but before that I want to make sure that the game mode switches. If the score becomes 40 and the current game mode is normal, then it's time to switch the game mode to chase. After this, delete that particular clone. Keep in mind here that the ghost does not recognize the particular game mode yet, but if you do test the program, the food clones will get eaten one by one. That's nice. So far, the grid contains the directions from the Pacman on each empty tile. But during the normal mode, we don't want the ghost to be following this and chasing the Pacman. Rather, we want the red ghost to randomly move around the top left of the screen, just moving about a few coordinates. So, to store a different set of directions, create a new list called grid red for all sprites. Like the main grid, delete everything at the beginning, add a hash if touching level, and add a blank if not. After the encoding is complete, the red grid will be the same as the grid. However, the red grid is not yet cleaned by anything, while the grid list is cleaned by the path, which also adds directions to it. We will be doing something similar for the red grid, but before we get into that, let's make a few small changes in the ghost. While getting the tile, set the tile variable to the original value if the game mode is chase. But if it is not, then set it to item index of grid red. Before we proceed any further, let me quickly explain the way the red ghost will move during the normal game mode. There are going to be 4 different mark spots, all near the top left, and the ghost will randomly move from one of them to the next. As you can see on the screen, the 4 indices are 249, 256, 313, and 325. Try to keep these in your mind. Getting back to scratch. Create a custom block called setIndices, making sure to run without screen refresh. Place this implementation at the end of init grid. Now it's time to define the setIndices function. It's pretty simple. Create a new list called indicesRed for all sprites. At the start, delete everything from that list. Now, create a new variable called currentRedIndex for all sprites. This will refer to the index that the ghost is currently moving towards. Set it to 1 and let's add those 4 indices to the list. That's 325, 249, 313 and 256. Great, one small change to the Pacman. Every game tick, we are broadcasting the message find path to Pacman. But this must only be done if the game mode is chase. If you change that, you're good to go for this sprite. Perfect, it's time to set up the alternative path. Duplicate path to Pacman and rename the sprite as path to red indices. The changes here are pretty simple. Every place you see grid, change it to red grid. This happens a few times in the functions getTileAt and cleanGrid. Alright, we need to make some changes in the findPath function as well. Create a variable called temp for this sprite only. Set temp to the current red index. After this, we want the current red index to change its value to something from 1 to 4, but not what it currently is. For example, if current red index is 3, we want to change it to a random value of 1, 2 or 4. So, repeat until current red index is not temp. The temp variable just stores what current red index was at first. Each time, set current red index to a random value from 1 to 4. This way, the current red index variable will keep changing its value until it is not itself. Wonderful, after this we are moving the sprite to the Pacman and expanding outward from there. Rather than going to the Pacman, we must go to the tile with an index that corresponds to the red indices list. So, get the position at index, item current red indices of indices red. The sprite has now gone to the correct location, so the rest of the logic is the same as the earlier pathfinding script. Like we did previously, we now just have to change every case of grid to grid red. In addition to find path, we must also do it for try moving in all directions. This is the case initially and for the 2 cases of the condition at the end of the function. Wow, that was some work, but it will be worth it. Go to the red ghost and find the start game script. Each time in the main game loop, we are implementing the chase code function. However, we must only do this if the game mode is chase. The other case is if game over is normal. For this, we create a custom block called normal code, no run without screen refresh needed. This function can be implemented in the latter condition. Great, we have to actually define the block now. Duplicate chase code and the else condition will be slightly different. First, switch costume to red and then get the tile at the X and Y position. If index is equal to item current red index of indices red, then broadcast a new message called find a random path for red. This way, once the ghost has reached its intended location, we can get the next location for the ghost to go to. After this, go to the path to red indices sprite and change the find path to Pacman event to the one that we just broadcasted. Go back to the red ghost. For the else condition, create a custom block called follow path to coordinates with slow with an input of slow. This is an animation, so do not run without screen refresh. Throw in the block with a slow input of 16. Since the input is higher, the block will move more slowly from tile to tile. Okay, we must define this. It's super simple. Just duplicate the code for find path to Pacman and that's it. Really, rather than create this function, we could have just reused the find path to Pacman block. I was trying to do something altogether different with this block, so I programmed it this way the first time. So I will just continue with this, but you can use the same block just with a different slow input and there will be no problems. Anyway, test the program now and well, that is super disappointing. The ghost is just stuck. But that's because we haven't started the feedback loop. Once the ghost knows the directions, it can move to the intended tile and then the next target tile is set up along with the directions. So we just need to ensure that the path is set up initially and after this everything will work. Go into the stage and here broadcast find a random path and wait. That's it. Test the program and wow, the ghost randomly moves around the top left of the screen. I'm going to fast forward so you can see the game mode switch. We've now eaten enough food and bam, now the ghost goes after the Pacman. This is great work and we are getting closer and closer to the finish line. If you've enjoyed this video then please make sure you leave a like and also don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Thanks for watching and I will see you in part 7.